Would be talking about women's portrayal in media, the good, the bad, the eh. Throughout this video, you will hear stuttering, likely swearing, and a lot of awkward pauses and rethinking of thoughts, because frankly, I do not know how to edit. It is not one of my strengths, and that is okay. For now, at least. First and foremost, we must talk about why it is important in order to have good portrayal of women in media. And this is partially because media is one of the easiest things that we interact with that trains our minds in order to think the way that we do. It finds us role models, it finds us thinking patterns, it gets us to believe in different messages and depending on what it says. And nowadays, especially when it has been shown in multiple studies, that the areas for tool use and objects light up instead of recommendation for a person when someone is presented with a woman, that kind of cause problems. But we have slowly been changing that, and from the past history of the ages of being sad, boring female characters that nobody really is interested into tolerable ones, and now we have great ones. And one of the best representations of female characters, or their strengths, is Arcane. And this is partially because they understand the fundamental rule of striking a balance. When writing women, there's either the woman stuck in the closet waiting for her rescuer, or when people are trying to go the other way, they swing a little bit too hard, and now their character is no longer human. She's too perfect. She's capable of doing everything without even trying. There is no struggle, and nobody likes to see a Mary Sue. What this does, though, is that it's amazing at specializing characters into their own strengths based off of their interests, personalities, and more, and it allows them in order to grow and flourish in those fields. Take example Mel. She's not one of the most physical fighters. In fact, I wouldn't say that she is a physical fighter at all. She doesn't have to be, considering the majority of her upbringing. It's a little bit surprising. But when you put into her efforts, you can understand why. She is a peacemaker to some degree. But that doesn't mean that she doesn't go with warlike methods to get what she wants. She is able to completely overpower people in the terms of mental mechanics. Despite being on a council of 7, it is amazingly rare that she doesn't get her way because she knows how to play the game. She knows how to get people on her side. She knows how to get them to turn one against the other. And we see this throughout multiple interactions of show don't tell, being how wonderful of a manipulator she is to get what she wants. Now, other characters are not this contained, reserved, all of that sort. And we can see this mainly in the tanks that are Vi and Sevika. They are relatively similar when it comes at first glance. Both hand-to-hand fighters, both amazingly overpowered to their own degree, and some of the most feared people when it comes to combat. However, they still have their differences in that sort. Sevika, for example, is a much more reserved and cautious player. She ends up taking as much thought and effort as she possibly can throughout the battles in order to make sure that things are going well. She thinks about how to go through combat situations. She thinks about what are the risks. Where Vi, partially because she's younger, partially because of her hot-headedness, tends to hit first strike, deal with it later. She has been repeatedly shown to jump into combat face first, and has often been commented to block with her face. As well, she is a great person when it comes to offense. She is not great with defense, and it kind of reflects in her personality. She wants to go. She wants to attack, and if she doesn't strike hard enough the first time, it means the second time it should be harder. And she does this without thinking of the consequences of her actions. And finally, we get to my personal favorite, Jinx. Right over here, jack of all trades, master of none. Kind of. Well, she has been shown in order to have her own specialized illness and struggles with mental health, which are beautifully portrayed. She tends to focus on engineering. However, throughout the show, we can see her evolve in order to become a master of from the master of engineering to a more jack of all trades. We can constantly see her brilliant creations. We can see her tinkering in her workshop constantly. We can see her working through the blueprints, trying out new things, acting like a scientist would. But towards the end, when more is required, we can end up seeing where she ends up learning the skills in order to practice in such a way in order to get more close-range combat. Where she constantly fights against machines, where there's constantly people running after her, especially with the target on her back, and you can understand why she starts to perfect the other art when she's not able to use her favorite method. Caitlyn is okay. I will not say she's my favorite. Cannot say she's nearly as powerful as the others. She and herself does tend to have a little bit of a contrast from Jinx, as they are both users of long-ranged weapons. When you can see Jinx being significantly more reckless, wanting bigger power, using a lot of more creative versions in order to get what she wants, where Caitlyn tends to use the definite version of weaponry in combat and all of that sort. I've been talking so much about combat. The slight other with her is that I have, at least, is when it comes to her motivation. It's honestly, it is better than what most shows could have ever achieved, but in comparison to the other female cast of the show, it is slightly sad, where we can see the horrors of struggling with mental illness, where we can see the switches in loyalty, we can see the struggle between love and family throughout many different characters. And in their way, it is slightly hard in order to sympathize with Caitlyn when her breaking point is not even what should have been the breaking point. But overall, wonderful characters, beautifully written, little overly focused on combat, but that is okay because we like strong women. And it is possible to write them while they still make mistakes and get beat up and end up hurting and losing their battles, and they will still be strong. Next, we are going to be talking about Full Metal Alchemist, the Brotherhood version, because that is the only one that is worth acknowledging. It was perhaps the only anime that I've ever seen. This should be lower. That knows how to write women well. And in itself, it tends to have its own specialized interests and priorities. We can have overpowered women between Oliver and Izumi. We can have amazingly loyal women, such as Lieutenant Hawkeye, and we can see the other two, being May and Winry, as actual human characters that I tend to prefer the most. Winry has energy. She is dedicated to her passion. She is dedicated to work, and it just happens to be automail. Because ultimately, what you need in order to write a good character is the energy, spark, and drive that gets them in order to act on what they want. She is completely obsessed with automail, and as such is willing to go to the lengths in order to find cities that are the capitals of it, demanding that she be taken there, where she tries to learn as much as she can, constantly trying to further her abilities. May is fighting in order to find the... Oh, my sweet mother of God, this is the killing me. May, the wonderful, sweet little character in her panda. Such a good panda. We are not doing this. Brain break. We're going to move on to Izumi for a second. This is probably the closest that you could get to an overpowered woman, but still written correctly, because a lot of the times you don't actually put effort into writing why characters are as scary as they are, why they're so horrifying, why they have the power that they do. And we can shoot this because Izumi, at her very heart, is a dedicated wife and a grieving mother. In this show, it is a very brutal thing, but She ended up losing her child, and through that desperation tries to bring it back through alchemy. Where human transmutation is strictly forbidden because of its horrible, horrible consequences. But through this horrible decision, she is able to unlock a power that's only people who are able to go through this decision are able to achieve. It explains why she is, one, so wonderful as she is. Two, it is shown that she was tutored by people who were more ruthless than she was. And three, she is... What is my three? Three, she is constantly unashamed of who she is, what she wants, and goes at it with full heart. The other powerhouse of this show is Olivia, and she is perhaps the closest one you could get to the completely overpowered woman. Everyone fears her. It is more acceptable, though, because she is a side character rather than one of the main casts, and side characters are able to get away with a lot more and less characterization because of it. It is, instead of becoming overdone and annoying to watch as it would with the protagonist, when we end up seeing Oliver completely terrify men who are 7-8 feet tall in this show, probably, it's seen as hilarious. Because it is impressive that she is able to command the amount of respect that she does, and yet we are still able to see the soft side that she's able to have when she's able to manipulate, and we are constantly shown why she has been able to rise to the position that she has, be it through her mind, be it through her caution, and in every other way. There we are. May is frankly adorable. She is written slightly more as a child, but that is alright. And while she does have the stereotypical crushes and obsessions, she still has a primary goal that she tends to go forward, and values and beliefs that she refuses to sacrifice for the good of others. When faced with a terrible choice, she is the first in order to inflict herself to protect who has helped her, to make sure that he does not get injured. She is constantly going around fighting for as best as she can, and even when injured, tries to do her best in order to go around it. She perhaps is not one of the strongest characters, but it is through her niche ability that she is able to hold her own against people who are significantly older and trained, and much more trained than she is. And we have to admit that is impressive. Lieutenant Risa Hawkeye is also fun. She is one of the better characters, especially considering that it is anime, however, a little bit bland. We can still see... Here is what makes her a bit more redeemable, though. It's the why. Because a lot of times, we will see in anime or other shows a woman blindly fall in love with the man and just follow them around, doing everything they possibly can. I think one of the best things about Risa Hawkeye is, despite the fact that she does deeply love the Colonel, it is obvious that it's in a way of caring rather than one of pure love or lust. And we are able to see why. We can see how they've grown together throughout the ages. We can see how they have bonded through the shared trauma and their horrible actions. We can see how they plan in order to fix things. And frankly, that is magnificent. Now, we have talked God knows how much about combat. We must now talk about characterization. And Avatar: The Last Bender is one of the best shows in order to show females characterization. Legend of Korra being alright. It's okay. Now, Korra herself is a good character. She's not exactly the perfect, but that's alright. She's got spunk, she's got energy, she has her own struggles. If the surrounding cast of hers was better and had more personality, I frankly think that the show would have been more loved than it currently is. Now on to Avatar: The Last Airbender. Katara is often complained about for being a little bit hypocritical, for being too much of a girly girl and all of that sort, but frankly, I can understand why, and I like her for that sort, because being feminine does not make one weak, and her interest and her tendencies to be motherly and caring and tend to try to hold the team together doesn't make her a bad character, and it doesn't make her any weaker for it. In fact, I'd say that it potentially makes her stronger, and it is just absolutely brilliant to have a character that can be more than just one thing without having to choose. She is the heart of the team. She's the emotional one, who gives speeches, who cares, who clings too strongly to values. But that's what makes her human. It's what makes her interesting. It's the fire within her heart that sets things into action, that sends her to motion. And so what if it starts with an inspired speech instead of throwing rocks? Toph is a little bit of her foil. Frankly, because she is as much of a tomboy as you can get, despite she's constantly being able to one-up people who are stronger, constantly taking care of herself, because other people would either look down on her or assume or leave her to be, and she is frankly sick of being coddled, because her parents were responsible for an obscene amount of it. You can understand why these two characters clash, but yet throughout the show we can see how they start off on the wrong foot, disliking each other, but slowly tend to grow together. These are the heroines. Now, the villainesses. Azula is a wonderful character, who is perhaps the strongest one of them all. She's able to bend lightning. She is able to manipulate people through fear, torture, and just manipulation of the mind. Because she's able to understand more things than anyone. If anyone was to be a master of all, it would be her. Yet she still tends to have a favorite fighting style. She tends to have a favorite way of manipulating people. She has a favorite way of going around at things in order to make sure that everything is right. That is honestly what makes her wonderful. You can see why she ended up being the way she was. You can see what her motivations are. You can see why she is as desperate to achieve her goals as she is. Her side characters, being Ty Lee and May, are slightly less interesting. Ty Lee being the most interesting of the two, as frankly she has energy, spunk, fire, a fighting method that most people do not use. May is... This is personal preference, but I do not like the quiet characters. I do not like ones who revel in blah. And May is unfortunately a character who simply does not care. This is explained throughout her upbringing and how the fact that she was punished should she ever show too much emotion. And while it is a very good explanation, it does not exactly excuse the fact that as a character she kind of fades into a shade of gray in contrast to these colorful characters. Finally, Hama. This is a woman who is out for vengeance. She has been wronged in her life, and she wants to take it out on anyone who may be mildly connected. And you can understand why. Because frankly, she and her people were targeted from a very young age and completely tortured for no specifically good reason. You could understand why, when she got the chance, she'd be able to see that everyone that on the side of the Fire Nation was evil, as per why she was going throughout her deeds. But even she has her own motivations. She wanted to pass down the art that she was able to cultivate, being bloodbending, was able to force and manipulate Katara into learning it. And it is just a very fun thing, because usually when you see old hag characters and all of that sort, they are explicitly evil, or explicitly good. There is no in between. And while she may be the villain on this side of the story, she's a sympathetic one. And it is very rare that this can happen. Now, the one, the only DC. DC is magnificent when it comes to writing its female characters, or at least better than its counterpart. It has produced Raven, it has made Starfire, it has been able to create many other women that many teenage girls would look upon with a heartthrob. And I guess voice. However, it does have a little bit of a problem. The main problem when it comes to DC's characters is the amount of sexualization that it goes hand in hand with all of its female characters, especially the villainesses. For example, Talia al Ghul. Well, a conniving woman who wants to support her father in the art of making the world better, but through a way that the end justifies the means and being as harmful as possible. She has little mercy, little understanding, and has been trained amazingly harshly. She is still human, and despite being able to be one of the most powerful people there are, you can still understand that she struggles when it comes to being emotional, when it comes to choosing one thing over the other. However, she is, as you can probably guess, sexualized. And as God forbid there ever be a female villain who is not interested in Batman, she is also the mother of Damian Al Ghul, one of the Robins, and the Sons of Batman. Next, Gotham City Sirens. Each one has a different motivation. Catwoman likes the shinies. She likes to be able to go around and get what she wants, and that is her reason for being a villain. Poison Ivy has a heart in the right place, but actions, again, justify the means. As for why she is an eco-terrorist who honestly wants to save the world, but goes by it and means that are not ideal. And Harley Quinn, depending on which version you go to, is a woman who is honestly just here for fun. And that is the best version of her, as we prefer that over the Joker-obsessed, oh my dear God, poor woman. But of these three beautiful women, every single one has kissed Batman. Catwoman is his on-again, off-again love interest, which is perfectly fine, because it creates interesting character dynamics, it creates a push and pull in order to bring Batman over to the dark side, or bring her over to the light side, as it encourages compromise to some degree, and adds for tension. However, just because the villain is a woman doesn't mean that they need to love Batman. Poison Ivy is obsessed with Batman. Why? Because he is the only man that she's not able to manipulate to the degree that she's able to manipulate others. And throughout many animated series, including The Brave and the Bold, she often suggests that he join her by her side, implying that she has a love for him. Harley Quinn, in Batman the Animated Series, despite being less of a love interest and all that sort, still kisses Batman. At the end of the episode of Harley's Fun Day Out, she tosses aside what she actually wanted, being a single dress, or to feel normalcy, to make out with Batman. And the thing is, this can actually be seen throughout all the other women of DC as a constant obsession with apparently always Batman. Talia al Ghul, mother of the child, Catwoman, on again, off again, love interest, Harley Quinn, potential partner, Poison Ivy obsessed, and even then, such as in the show Beware the Batman, a wonderful thing that points out the villains that are quite rare. I was very excited to see Magpie. She has a bit of Catwoman-like tendencies, as like Magpie suggests, she likes shiny things. She hunts around for that which grabs her eye. And while that is very Catwoman-y, it was interesting in order to see a different take on a character who was obsessed with it. What was ultimately the most disappointing, though, was that she also ended up becoming infatuated with Batman. Because God forbid you have two amazingly similar characters and not try to take them in different directions. This isn't even safe from the women who are not villains to Batman, such as Cheetah. Cheetah is the villainess to Wonder Woman, and yet, in Justice League, when they capture Batman, she makes out with him. Now, I understand that Batman has his appeal, but I refuse to believe that this amount of women are throwing him at them. And they are wonderfully written characters aside from that obsession with a man. They each have their own motivations as brilliant scientists, kleptomaniacs, women trying to make the world a better place, or simply people out there who have a few screws loose and are trying to make the best out of it. And this is why I absolutely adore the latest and newest edition from the Caped Crusaders, the Penguin. For once, we have a female villain that doesn't have an interest in Batman. I guess there are a few, but they are few and far between, and honestly, only one-shots, so they cannot be taken nearly as seriously. They are side characters, occasional things where the plot does not suffer if they are left out. What the Penguin changes, though, is the dynamic of it. This is a ruthless woman. Knows what she wants, knows how to get it, and is willing to do anything in order to achieve it. Including that she has her priorities, and family is not one of them. And I absolutely love this redesign because the Penguin has always been a character in that, and that's just kind of okay. He's always been the most changed, always been the most redesigned, and frankly, nothing ever made him iconic in the same way as the Joker, or Poison Ivy, or Harley Quinn, or many other characters. It was a household name, but there was no definite version. And I think this one has the potential to be it. Because not only is it, again, it is a good step forward for DC when it comes to writing its female characters, because while it has always provided them motivation and provided them fire and been able to create differences beyond them, which that was just stereotyping them into a single one or two personality trait, it has always struggled with completely centralizing their and kind of sidestacking their main goals to that of their interests of a male character. However, part of what makes Penguin iconic is the fact that she doesn't do this. And I know it is a step forward because she is far from conventionally attractive in the DC universe, and this is likely why it was partially taken on that way. However, it is a wonderful step forward in order to be able to create characters who are women who don't falter at the tiniest little thing because of a man. Because despite the wonderfulness of these shows, despite how wonderfully all they are characterized, it always falls a little bit flat if their motivations and personalities and understandings are shoved to the side for what? Plot? That isn't plot. Romantic pairings that never last. And so on. Of course, this is nothing compared to what anime has left to offer. Now, anime, of all of the forms of media, has always struggled the most when it comes to writing women. It portrays them as weak, boring, zero-dimensional. And the worst offender, in my opinion at the very least, is Sakura. In the shonen anime Naruto, I cannot say that women are written well. They're overly sexualized, and looking back at it at an older age, while you might have laughed at things when younger, you kind of start to pick up on things. But even back when I was young, I despised this character with a burning passion. Normally, in order to make the trio of a team a more balanced out team, even if the woman is at a less combat heavy stage, they tend to still have qualities to them that make them equals. I cannot say the same for Sakura. While almost every other character has a special ability of some sort, up until the very, very end, does she even start up until the very end does she even start developing one. And her entire personality can be summarized as I like Sasuke. She's ended friendships over I like Sasuke. She's prioritized her goals over I like Sasuke. She has decided to make almost every single decision off of her life over her obsession with a man who is nothing but rude to her. And even in her apparently greatest developing moment, during the great exams in order to become certified as a ninja, she still fails to actually develop personality. She worries about her hair and if Sasuke will like it. She worries about the lot of them sticking together. And it is frankly sad. Because even in real life, because statistically I'm sure there is a woman who is like this, even she has an opinion on what she wants to eat in the morning. Even she has hobbies aside from doodling their names in their notebook. And while this might have been okay from a side character, as a main character that is supposed to act as the main trio, as like Wonder Woman to Superman and Batwoman, it is horrible to see a character this empty. However, there are recently animes that have started to make this better, or even good. Take Marcel from Delicious in Dungeon. She is what he actually supports as a character who knows what she is doing. She is able to use powerful magic, and we are able to see why. Because we can be shown the amount that she ends up thinking through the spells. We can see her constantly study. We can constantly see her going throughout her decisions, and despite having a single motivation, being saving Fallon, shared with her companion Lyles, she still has time, aside from that one major goal of the equivalent of I like Sasuke, to show the rest of her personality. She shows protests in times that she decides to care. She thinks of her other teammates. and thinks about their personalities, their needs, what their wants. To some degree, she has her own insecurities in that time. And they are not all focused off of that singular goal. You can still have a main goal that is far from the ideal when it comes to female character writing, as long as you actually add up the backstory, because what is the shining star at the tree if the tree's dead? Rest of the female characters are okay, such as Haruhi from Ouran High School Close Club. Normally, she would be a character that I'm not necessarily a fan of, and while she is far from my favorite in this anime, I can understand her appeal. She is the everyman, a trope that I normally despise, but is understandable for and necessary for the wacky hijinks that comes from the rest of the host club. She is a necessary part in order to ground people to understand, and even then, she still has her own interests. She is constantly tired and exhausted by the club's actings, going through what she wants. She has her own motivations, usually being fancy tuna, and she makes decisions on her own with her ultimate goal of becoming a lawyer like her mother. The reason that she sticks to the goals that she does comes from an external motivation, an understanding with all of the surrounding hijinks just being there to help her in this journey. And finally, My Hero Academia. A show that started off with some promise, and yet when I was given the option to cosplay as a character, there is a reason that I chose Bakugo instead of any of the female cast. This anime is not great at writing women, but I will give credit where credit is due. It does tend to have a variety of them, with some different motivations, some different personalities, all of that sort, but as much anime does, they kind of just shove them to the side without properly developing them. And often, they exist to be the love interests of the male characters rather than their own. While it is okay in order to have a character to be paired up, in order to want more out of a relationship, one cannot exist as a character to be the romantic partner. That should be a second thought, not a forefront. Take Uraraka, for example. She originally joined the school in order to be able to become a hero, so that she could become able to financially support her parents. Different motivation shows how everything could be possible, and yet, when important characters are brought up in regards to this, she's not part of the episode. And over time, she has been slowly, despite being showed how she can think outside of the box, to show that she is able to work in ways that other people can't. She ultimately becomes downcast to nothing more than a blushing idiot for the other blushing idiot to fawn over as the final girl. Momo is overly sexualized in her design, and honestly, I cannot say more about her personality other than she is rich, nice, and often paired up with Todoroki. It is the slightly less... Robbie is honestly the character I have the most to say about in her being interesting. She has different friendships, she's constantly there for different support, but honestly, I cannot say much about her because she's, like the rest, not that memorable. And it does not help either that the main cast of females are constantly harassed by very stupid characters in the male cast that I very much would like them to get rid of. And they're not even punished. These brilliant women are often tricked into doing fan service and nonsense. For what reason? Anime still has a very far way to go when it comes to writing its women, and frankly, so does a lot of media, but over time, it has been getting better. For example, again, Delicious in Dungeon, one of the most recent animes to come out, and it is absolutely brilliant when it comes to portraying neurodiversity character tropes, so actual women. So, at the very least, we are taking steps forward in the right path when it comes to the evolution of our characters. And with that, thank you for watching. Goodbye. The Blim. Where is it? There you are.